Hello, Malty. Munster Monsters. And thank you to Drambam 1999 or 1999 for the malt mention introducing another whisky review from the Whisky Bothy, which surrounds me, in which I dwell, constantly wrapped in the mists of unchill filtered malt moments. Most of the time, not all the time, because a few whiskies out there are chill filtered, and if they're not chill filtered, they're simply filtered without the chill on, and it's for cosmetic reasons, and it diminishes the whisky. But if you're relatively inexperienced around whisky, and so say if you've been maybe a couple of years around whisky and you've been to a whisky show, you're really not going to pick up on these things. It really starts to affect you over time. But this is the point in which you start exploring independent bottlings. However, this review, number 1048, is specifically focusing on Glenfarclas 15-year-old single malt, bottled at 46%, because it's widely available, it's generally a good malt, although there has been some historical inconsistencies which people have picked up on and shared online, because this is where you find out about these things. It's not just Bunnahabhain, you know, it's not just Bowmore. So I'm going to pour a wee dram of this. Glenfarclas is still an independent family-owned distillery, and partly due to the size of the distillery and also the tradition of the distillery, they tend to keep a foot in the craft camp of bottling quality, which you find beautifully presented in what's called the family cask range, which can get quite expensive, but they are genuinely well mentored, seasoned, really old casks, old generation sherry casks that have properly gone the distance, and there's some absolute bangers to be found amongst them if you have the deep pockets to buy them. But for the mere functionary blue collar maltsters like ourselves, we tend to go for the basic, which starts with the 106, the non-age statement, high strength bottling, which frankly is a bit in the rough side. It's more rough than it used to be because the sherry cask influence, which is the primary signature of Glenfarclas and other surrounding distilleries, including its next door neighbour Aberlour, what you'll find is it works really well with sherry. And I'd say start with the 12-year-old. It's widely available. You'll probably see it in discount. It's a pretty good single malt, but it is bottled at 43%, and it should be at 46%. However, the first affordable, accessible malt that they do at 46% is this, and I must hand it to them. I like a brown bottle. I like an old-fashioned bottle, and I like a label which hasn't changed in basically 100 years. I like that. There's been maybe some nominal and slight changes, but nothing dramatic and nothing designed to spook the customer. So my compliments to Glenfarclas on that. And also, it's important to realise with this distillery that they direct fire all their stills. I'm going to come back to that shortly. Let's have a wee nose at this malt, which I last reviewed about a year ago, actually, just over a year ago, in Ralphie Review 981, because the Glenfarclas 15 is one of these whiskies that I come back to each year just to catch up with it and see how it's getting on and see if it's changing, with the anticipation being that because it's not possessed by a corporation who are intent on over-branding and under-delivering on the juice, that there's actually going to be some consistency and some reliability and affordability about it. I have been a little bit unsettled the last time I bought a bottle, but I have to say my confidence with this is in the process of being restored. This is a really delightful old-fashioned nose where the sherry is integrated into the malt and not sitting over the top like a big sherry bomb overcoat. And frankly, that really matters. If you're looking for your Christmas cake, New Year celebration single malt, you can't go wrong with a bottle of this. It'll tick the boxes. Those who don't drink whiskey will love it because it's got all the flavours you associate with midwinter in the Northern Hemisphere. It's got the rich fruit cake, it's got lots of raisins, it's got that spicy note, what they call clootie dumpling, the clootie being the suet-soaked cloth that they put the dumpling in before they boil it or steam it. And basically it's a steamed cake. That's what a dumpling is. And a fruit steep cake, and then once it's been, because it's so high in sugar and fat content, they leave it. They make the clootie dumpling during the summertime, and then leave it to mature for months before it's cooked for the winter, and that gives it an extra richness, particularly if they've soaked the raisins in whiskey. Little bit of historical narrative here, folks. You know, you get extras here in the bothy. On the nose, everything I'm looking for. Everything I'm looking for from Glenfarclas. Lots of toffee. It's sweet. It's syrupy. It's got nose feel. Now, mouth feel is when you get texture. But you actually, such is the richness of flavour here, for the price, you're getting a lot of nose texture. So the nose feel is really, really good. So it's more than just individual flavours. You're getting that condensed, slightly leathery, slightly armchair, well, antique shop armchair, heavy raisin note with a little bit of tobacco. And it's not too much. It's actually quite nicely balanced. And at 15 years old, because of the way the malt whisky is made, through direct fired stills, both wash stills and spirit stills, and believe me, I already know you know, but some of you will be watching will be not quite sure, direct fired stills automatically, every time, without exception, improve the quality of the new make spirit. They give it body, weight and texture because of the slowness and the copper contact in the worm tubs. Now, I know, because I've had this before, the comment will come back, hey Ralphie, there's less copper contact in worm tubs. Well, that really all depends on the worm tubs. And by the way, when the liquor is going down the inside of the worm tubs, which are made of copper, they're not actually in contact with the metal. They're in contact with the copper oxide, which coats the metal and creates a barrier over which the vaporizing, the devaporizing, liquefying spirit coming off the stills is actually condensing. It's more complex than we're told. If you want to know about how worm tubs work, don't ask distillers, people. Ask chemists. Ask scientists. And they will tell you what's really happening. Unfortunately, the Scotch whisky industry too often is bought and sold on its own created narrative, because it sounds pleasant and it keeps the consumers happy. Particularly after they've had a dram or two. Taste. Nippy. Resinous. Slightly acetic. Very toffied. Very fruity. Quite distinctly estery. As estery as a Jamaican rum in its own way. More muted? Of course it is. It's Scotch whisky, it's not rum. But you're heading in that direction. I tell you what, see a rum matured in an ex-Glenfarclas cask, a proper one. My goodness, what a banger that would be. So I'm adding 1.5 That's 7.5 millilitres of water. For me, that's what's working. I give it a minute in the glass for each year in the cask. But so that this review isn't too long, I'm just going to automatically speed it up for you and say that I'm sitting looking for the Scotch mist. A little bit will appear. A little bit. But not as much as should be appearing. So although there's not chill filtration going on, there's still considerable filtration. In fact, there's too much filtration for this day and age in the modern market. And I say the modern market because the landscape out there is changing very rapidly, even as I speak here in late September 2024. Things are changing fast. Sales of whisky are way down. The most valuable customer, the most loyal customer, is now needing to be targeted by smaller distillers carefully. Cut out the flannel, cut out the packaging, get rid of the container, think of the environment, think of the metal involved in this, think of the extra cost for this. Distillers, get rid of your containers. It's now becoming a persistent bad habit. It's not good for the environment. Please consider your carbon footprint. And start introducing screw tops again. We're sick fed up, seriously, and Glenfarclas, you're guilty too. Sick fed up of snapping corks. In the old days, people would take the cork off, and particularly in Scotland when you're surrounded by a few arseholes who have got an alcohol problem, and they're not hard to find. They say, you throw away the cork and you never put it back on the bottle, laddie. And you're thinking, oh, geez, just get me out of here. I don't want to be in this, breathing the same air as this arsehole. I'm enough of an arsehole myself as it is without getting infected by other people's arseholiness. Does that make sense? It's a Scottish thing. But people have changed now. People are more moderate with their consumption. The corks are on, the corks are off, the corks are on. It could literally be 50 times plus. And particularly when open bottles are lasting longer, because people have more bottles opened at once, and that includes yourself. Even when you're getting starting whiskey, you need to get your bearings. You need to explore. And there's nothing goes to waste, by the way, and never should. Then it just makes practical sense. But you and I know what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a culture that's wrapped in its own wee tartan blanket and can't see the outside world anymore. But that'll change. So it would be lovely to see some, let me see, what would you call it? The Enthusiasts collection from Glenfarclas of everything at 46% and above, properly unchill filtered, properly natural colour, clearly stated, and emphasising the direct fired still influence, where the heat's going under the stills, heating like a saucepan on a gas stove, with rummagers in to stop too much burning, but just allow enough scorching. The toasting of the wash. You don't get toasting of the wash with steam coils. They are more efficient. And this is another thing that I want to just remind you. Whenever a distiller anywhere, for any reason, starts to try and persuade you they're doing things for reasons of efficiency, could you please shut them down and ask politely that they disinvest in efficiency and improve their inefficiency rations. They need to prove the inefficiency, because that's where the flavour is. That's where the identity is. That's where the intensity of sensation is. Sweet, salt, sour, bitter and savoury. That's where all that is. Inefficiencies. That's why Springbank is still the top dog. And Glenfarclas could be up there. But they're kind of, foot in both camps and sort of fudging it in the process. in my opinion. Let's give a final taste in this before I give a malt mark. It's certainly improved in the last time, so I'm improving my malt mark. Of course, it's under the modern appraisal system, but this is going to be a good mark. But frankly, I'm going to drop a point off already because this isn't properly unchill filtered. This should be basic barrier filtered. I want to see the bits coming out in my glass. This is what we want nowadays. This is why we're banging the barrel, folks. There's a little bit of Scotch mist creeping in now. A little bit. But I would have expected more sooner. More minty and a little bit more floral and more grainy on the nose. The sherry is sitting very comfortably there. These are good sherry casks. Delightful, actually. Crisp, clean, barley citrus, zesty, mouth-watering, lemon and lime rind. This is a different sort of sherry monster. It's an expressive sherry monster, and I'm happy to recommend this to you in 2024. And I just hope the Glenfarclas are going to maintain and improve on their standards. And there you have it, malt mates. The mark is 83 out of 100. And that's us. That's really all I have to say. This becomes the 17th Glenfarclas review in this channel, which means on average it's more than once a year. So I don't think it's going to be too long before I come back to Glenfarclas. Certainly next year I will. I've no idea what I'm going to be reviewing, but hopefully the distillery's listening, paying attention to market trends, and will pop something out for the genuine, legitimate whisky drinkers, which is really going to catch our interest at an accessible price, with the minimum of interference in the calibre of the whisky, and importantly, there's no need for containers and cartons. Anything that needs to be said can go on the label, because that's the contract. Bye.